Okay, let's bring in the White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh, 5 months onto the new gig, and you've had your hands full. Let's start some of the news of the week. Shocking to me, shocking. Cindy McCain, John McCain's widow, came out in favor of Joe Biden. What does the president think when he hears something like that?
Well, look, if you're advocating for our veterans, for our military heroes, there's a very clear contrast. No one wants to go back to the disastrous Obama days where under Obama-Biden, our Air Force was the smallest it had been. Our Navy was the smallest it had been. Take that and compare that to President Trump, who invested a record amount of money in our military, got our troops a pay raise, and then tragically, look at what happened to our veterans. Under Obama-Biden, you have up to 300,000 veterans who died as they had applications pending. That was in an Inspector General report, a real tragedy. Think of that number, 300,000. That's extraordinary. And then you have a president who came in and cleaned up the Obama-Biden mess and fixed the VA and gave access to health care to millions of veterans who needed it.
Kayleigh, tell us what went through, I guess, behind the scenes. You know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed on a Friday. There was all over the weekend. Everyone's trying to figure out with Mitt Romney. You know, there was Susan Collins, who was maybe concerning, Lisa Murkowski, who was concerning in Alaska. But Mitt Romney seemed to be the one that everyone was holding their breath. Tell us what was going on behind the scenes to get Mitt Romney to agree to vote for the nominee that President Trump puts forward.
Yeah, it was really Leader McConnell and Senator Lindsey Graham and those who are working in Congress right now to make sure the votes are there. But from our end, we are singularly focused on making sure that the nominee that we pick is extraordinarily qualified, is a textualist, an originalist, someone who has exhibited fidelity to the Constitution, to implementing the plain meaning of statutes, and is there to implement what the law is rather than what they would like it to be, which is what the Democrats tend to do with any of their given appointments.
Kayleigh, you know, you're in the media, you're press secretary, but you've been in the media. Maybe our audience doesn't understand what this means. It's called a full lid. When the president calls it, it means there's no more information coming out of the White House. Oddly, Joe Biden, with 6 weeks left to go before the election, should be out there campaigning, talking. The campaign is called what's called that full lid before noon 8 times in the month of September. What do you think's going on?
That's right. You know, a lid is essentially when you tell the press they can go home because you won't be making any news or public appearances. And, you know, this president, it's very hard to keep up with him here at the White House, all of our staff, because he's in different states every day, sometimes holding as many as 3 or 4 speeches in one day where he's actively engaging with voters. He's routinely taking questions with the press as he boards Air Force One, deplanes from Air Force One. He has another press briefing today. He's truly the most transparent president in history and the hardest working president. That's what America deserves, not someone who hides from the press for whatever given reason. Well,
what about Biden's lid? 8 times in the month of September so far, just weeks before the election. Does the president, do the advisors, does the comms department think there's something going on with Biden, or is he just coasting?
Yeah, I can't get too far into Joe Biden because of Hatch Act reasons, but what I'd say is this, is there's really no starker contrast between a president who is, to me, the hardest working president really that we've seen in my lifetime, certainly. He's around the clock, doing public appearances. Look at his record. He always likes to say promises made, promises kept, and I've actually kept more promises than I even made, and that certainly is true at this point as we are now ushering in Middle East peace. Who would have thought?
It's true. I shouldn't have led you in that direction with the Hatch Act. That my fault. I apologize. Chris Wallace.
All good, Eric.
Chris Wallace is going to be the moderator of the first debate, and he's come out with some of the topics. Any of those concerning? Any of those look good to the president, to the administration?
Yeah, we're happy to speak on all of those topics, particularly law and order and security in our streets. It was extraordinary to read a New York Times article yesterday, in all places, the New York Times, that talked about the violence in Portland, actually, that has spilled into suburbs. And they talked about a black homeowner who had an American flag up, who became the target of violent protests. They were screaming, "We'll come, we'll burn down your house," all because he had an American flag. Americans deserve better better in this country. They deserve law and order. They deserve to feel security. And it's good to know that that is at least going to be a topic that comes up, because the American people deserve to have a president who protects the well-being of their families.
Now, Kayleigh, I know it's your job to put it out there, put a positive spin on things, but let's be honest. So the president has been trailing in some important swing states. Now that gap is narrowing. We've had some recent polling this week that shows that gap narrowing, and him, President Trump, overtaking Joe Biden in some important states. But are there important states that you're worried about? For me, I've been talking about North Carolina for the better part of 2 months. Tell us about what the president sees as an important battleground state.
Well, the president routinely travels around the country. We've been in several different states this week. We believe the American people recognize his great accomplishments on the military, on the economy. It's a V-shaped recovery, a super V. As he said, we're rebounding quickly. We are, in fact, had the smallest contraction of any country, far smaller than Europe, because we have a president who's the jobs president. He brought us the hottest economy once, and he will do it again, which is why we're exceeding expectations. It was not predicted that we'd be in this low of unemployment by the end of the year, but now we're already in single digits, and it's only Q3. More work to be done, but we believe people across the country recognize that this president's the right man for the job, and will bring back our economy.
All right, on a personal level, last question, Kayleigh. On a personal level, it's a hostile media. No question about it. I watch these press briefings every single time you hold one or the president shows up to one. It's a hostile. How do you handle this media personally? I know I have a lot of friends like, oh, she's tough, she's awesome, but some of the things that they do have to get to you. Just give us a sense of what it's like being in that briefing room.
Yeah, well, when you have truth on your side, it's a powerful weapon. Look, when I came into this job, I said I'm going to call out inaccurate reporting. Republican presidents are always the victim of unfair media reporting, fake news stories, and I am going to hold people accountable, call it out. I have a great team here to support me in that effort, and ultimately, I think it's important that the American people get the truth, which is why I often look in the briefings directly at the camera. This isn't about engaging with the reporter. It's about delivering truth to the American people. All right,
Kayleigh McEnany, thank you very much for your time. You're one of the most busy people in D.C. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.